Hey, good morning, everybody. It's me, Robert Phoenix, once again broadcasting to you live from the Rapallo of my mind. And for those of you who are familiar with Ezra Pound, you know what I'm referring to. Good morning. It's another edition of 15 Minutes of Flame. It is the 513 edition of 15 Minutes of Flame, just 2 days away from the 15th, which is the big move day here in Central Texas in the Hill Country. Also, apparently, my grandmother's birthday. My dearly departed, late great, eccentric, wacky as hell grandmother, Margaret. It's her birthday on Friday. So she was an interesting person in a lot of ways. She I've told this story before, and for some of you who are kind of new to the show, I'll tell it again. So so when she was, I think, in her 40s, she was at a restaurant in her town, Millbrae, California, and she was, I think, I don't know, she was at the bar or something. I mean, she was not a drinker or anything, so it was not like wasn't like she was out hitting the sauce. But she met this guy named Tony at this restaurant slash bar, whatever, and they exchanged phone numbers. And she talked to Tony almost every single day for the rest of her life after that. And my grandmother was married, and she had a very contentious relationship with her husband, my not paternal grandfather, who's a great guy, by the way. Astrologically, it was a bad mix. She was a Taurus and he was a Leo, so they were squaring off. And boy, they used to fight, man. They had some, never physical, but they let it rip. They had no they had no filter with each other. Anyway, so my grandmother used to talk to this guy Tony every single day, and she lived to be in her to her till her late 70s, and she never saw Tony again. Like, she met him one time and they talked every single day, and she used to drive my grandfather crazy because she was always talking with this Tony guy, and they would talk for an hour and a half. Anyway, Tony shows up at my grandmother's funeral, and it's like that. It was just so bizarre. He was really heartbroken because this woman who had become his friend over the phone all these years had passed away. My mother was a trip. She used to take in strays. And Tony was kind of a stray. He was a telephone stray. My grandmother loved the telephone. She'd get on the phone and she'd talk for hours. And she took in this one woman, Diane, who was just she was as batty as the coronavirus. This woman, Diane. She had teeth missing, and she'd always come over for the holidays and like Thanksgiving. And then she lived in her car, which is really kind of sad. But she seemed to do okay with it. But she told us that she had dental work done, and that the dentist put some kind of a transceiver in her teeth, and she was able to they were able to communicate with her. And I'm like, that doesn't sound too far out. I could actually wrap my head around. I was fascinated by Diane, obviously. Uh, and she really crossed my path in like my late teens and in my early 20s. But it's going to be grandma's birthday on Friday, which I think is also, if I'm not mistaken, Dennis Rodman's birthday on the 15th of May. And I think it's either Brian Eno or David Byrne. I think they're born on back-to-back days, which actually says a lot because those guys have collaborated. And Brian Eno being the first producer, I think, of the Talking Heads, if I'm not mistaken. Or if he wasn't the first one, he certainly became an integral part. He was almost like the fifth member of the Talking Heads. And of course, Byrne and Eno went on to do a number of things together, including, I think, 2 records, if I'm not mistaken. But that shows us the proximity of 2 suns together in alignment, the conjunction, and how that works and how they can actually bond together and form something more powerful than they could alone. for that matter. I remember one time, real brief, we're going back into the history of Robert now. One time I met a woman who was actually born on the very same day that I was born on. Very rare occurrence. Very rare occurrence. And let's just say we had an interesting time together. Very interesting time. And a kind of a fascinating person in a lot of ways. California software engineer, pretty high level software engineer as a woman. Like not a lot of women at that time, held those positions. Of course, that's changed because girls have learned how to code. All right, we got a lot to cover today. A lot to cover. Let me go to CL and see what's happening in Chatlandia. Let's see, who do we have here today? We got Justice, my man from down under, FUP 77. JMP Love. There's Judy. Hello, Judy. Tamara Garth in the house. Catherine Kingsmill. Welcome. Also, my bro's birthday today. Well, happy birthday to your bro. There's Phoebe Kane. 108 Dragon. Mojo Mama. What's happening, Joe? And then, hey, we got Michelle Taylor from the Sunshine State. Christy from way up there in Wisconsin. My grandmother's birthday on Thursday. Oh, I got a lot of Taurus energy in house. Susie Escobar. She made it at the start. There's Mary Greether. Morning, Mary. And Natasha Lloyd. My man, Steve. What's going on, Steve? Sherry Lewin. Nice to see you, Sherry. There's Uncle Glenn. Good morning, all my homies and virtual chains. Joe W. in the house. Cheryl Oshiavo. Hi, Cheryl. Finette Gatewood representing. Let's see, who else do we have in there? There's Leanne. Hey, Leanne, I'm going to reach out today, give you a call. Frank Bry. Don't stop swearing. It has a fact. Yeah, the potty mouth police came into the chat room. There we go. Sherry Lewin. Yeah, Brian Eno, the 15th of May. David Byrne, 14th of May. There's Rob Chopra. What's going on? Sri Rob. Nice to see you. Natalie Remington in the house. Here's my favorite anarchist, Christine Mose. Marie Gibson. We love your show. John Marie. Thanks, Marie. Got a nice letter today, email today from some folks in Bristol, England. In fact, I've been getting some really encouraging emails from folks, all around the world, actually, that have really been enjoying the content, the show, and of course, Jasper, who's in the house. And it's great. It's really great to be able to see that we're all interconnected and we're part of a wonderful web of people who are resonating towards truth and freedom and love, the really high vibrational capacity of our time. And to be able to do so as the weight of gravity and the density of the so-called reality seeks to establish a beachhead in our consciousness is probably the most heroic thing anybody could do. I mean, really think about it, to be able to affirm that you stand for something, right? You really, really stand for something. And that something is not connected to groupthink. It's not connected to conformity. It's not connected to some form of consensus reality. What it's really about is allowing the spirit of the Logos to come through and radiate and broadcast through your life in a way that the signal becomes unmistakable. And the more that we do that, the better off we are, the stronger we become, and the easier it is to attract other people who have their receivers dialed into the same signal that we're dialed into. And it's not a signal of this world. I mean, let's be clear about that. This world is a temporary place. It's a way station. It's a place for us to grow. It's a laboratory. It's a holodeck. It's a place where we're tested, and it's an important place. But it's not where we come from, and it's not ultimately where we're all going. And perhaps that place will begin to emerge through us more and more and more as we allow it to, as time goes on. And in order for that to happen, we have to break the chains of our conditioning. And breaking the chains of our conditioning can be painful. And certainly it can be uncomfortable, especially when other people are not happy with it, or they see it as a threat, or they see it as being fear-based, or they see it as being conspiratorial, all the jingoistic terminology that they're throwing out there now. Because as people look at what's going on, they're waking up. Now, they want to put a muzzle on that. And so they've got all these studies that are coming out, all these articles that, because people are panicking, they're afraid that they're going to resort to crazy, wacky things like conspiracy theories in order to make sense of the world. Well, of course they're going to, because they have to, because the mainstream media and the people that represent the so-called world of science, they're not doing us any favors. And they have shown us that we can't trust them. It would be one thing if we could trust them, but they've shown us that we can't trust them. Hello, Niall Ferguson. We can't trust them. Show us something trustworthy, and maybe we'll ditch the so-called conspiracy theories. How about that? Show us that you're open towards people maintaining their health and being responsible for their health and their own well-being, and maybe we'll trust you a little bit more. But to this day, you have not done that. They will continue to not do that because they have one program in mind, and that is to dominate your consciousness, your thought, and your will, and replace it with theirs. That's it. All right, before I go too far down the rabbit hole, let's do our little invocation here. Dear blessed and holy Father, Mother God, of the great central sun, which is the universal light, which is the light of Synod Emmanuel, we give you this broadcast, this transmission, for only the highest and best good, for only the highest level of truth to come through this transmission at this time and moving forward. For anybody that's currently watching it and or will be watching it after the fact, we ask that all karmic residue between anybody in association with this show be cleansed, purified, clarified, and removed so that we can enter back into our lives without any attachments or cords as a result of this. And we invoke a good time. Let's have some fun today. All right. God bless. Here we go. Let's get this thing rolling. Where do I start? Oh my God, there's so many places I want to begin. Let me get into the anecdotal world a little bit. So I've been playing around with Twitter a lot. Facebook, I'm coming back. I haven't been there in a while. I've got sick of Mark Zuckerberg and the blatant censorship, and cannot support it. But I have a lot of messages I've got to go retrieve on Facebook and stay in contact with some people there. So that's going to happen. But I've been playing around with Twitter because I wanted to understand Twitter more. I wanted to kind of get into the viral effect of Twitter to see if things should actually take root. And, what does it take to get a tweet to have, 10, 15, 20 people retweet it or like it. It's an interesting kind of experience. But I wound up getting into a flame war with a so-called progressive. And this is somebody who hates Donald Trump. Imagine that. They hate Donald Trump. And here's their premise. Their premise is that he's had 3 years to make things better, and he hasn't done shit. So why should we support him? I mean, okay, I'll be objective. Let's take the name Trump out of this. Let's just say President A. President A, from day one, has been essentially assaulted by a group of people who were extremely upset that President A wound up becoming president. And I know that a lot of people will say, well, they're in the same group or they're part of the same team. And to some extent, that's true. But I've tried to illustrate this as it relates to gangs, because what we're dealing with here is we're dealing with gangs and crime syndicates and families with power structures, all trying to establish themselves or get more powerful. So even rival gangs had relationships with one another. They weren't always on the best of terms, but they had relationships with one another because they knew that they were both involved in the same kind of industry or the same kind of trade. So on some level, they had to support one another. right? But they also had to make sure that their turf or their interests or their circle of influence and power would dominate over the other gang. And so we see this across the world. We see these gangs that are in competition with one another, but because of their modus operandi, they also have to somehow work together. And so this is how I view the Clintons and the Trumps, that they are two essentially crime syndicates. I mean, that's really, in a lot of ways, what they are. They're power families, and this is nothing new. This has been going on for a very long time. You have the Kennedys, you have the Bushes, right? These are just very small sample sizes. Of course, Europe has been doing this for centuries, right? With the black nobility and the power families that emerge out of Venice and then matriculate throughout Europe, becoming the royal blood, the blue bloods of Europe, right? The royal families, all essentially emanating out of Venice, the black nobility, the Venetians. This has been going on for a very, very long time. Okay, so let's be clear about that. But that one family got upset that the other family got a leg up on them. That's what happened. And the day that Hillary Clinton finally said, okay, we lost, which she said without really saying, by the way. Remember, her and Bill were dressed in purple. That was a sign. That was a clear sign that the purple revolution was on. And it's been on since then. And they've gone after Trump from day one. Even before he got into office, they went after him with the Electoral College. They went after him with Jill Stein going after the vote count. She stopped that real fast. When she found out that the states that were normally Democratic strongholds had actually voter discrepancies in Trump's favor, they pumped the brakes on that really fast. Okay. So there was that. They went after him, of course, with the whole Russia collusion thing, which is now really starting to bubble up and hopefully will explode here pretty quickly. There's that. Then they went after him for the Ukraine. The Russia thing took a long time. Mueller, think of all that money that was spent. Think of it. And what happened? Nothing. Zero. Wasted our time, wasted our money, but more importantly, what it did is it completely shattered the country. Like the amount of damage that those people did by pursuing a patently false narrative is incalculable. Incalculable. It tore the country apart. And the country, for all intents and purposes, has not recovered from that. Okay. So then they moved on to Kavanaugh. That was the next big thing. Kavanaugh. And they made a mockery of that. Of course, he gets approved. Then it comes down to Ukraine and this whole Ukrainian thing and impeachment. And now we have this wonderful little thing called COVID-19 and the coronavirus. So Trump has essentially, or President A, let's not even call him Trump, President A has faced obstacle after obstacle after obstacle after obstacle in his presidency. Now, I have shared with you that that it's in his chart. I mean, he's got Mars on his ascendant, okay? So he's going to elicit strong reactions in people, right? He's going to bring up conflict. That's the nature of Mars on the ascendant, especially somebody who has it in Leo, who has it the final degrees of Leo, and who happens to be president of the United States. That's what we're going to get. We're going to get conflict because of the nature of his chart. That's just the way it is. So if that's the case, and we've been involved in the country taking body blow after body blow after body blow for the last 3 years, all I can say is that he better prosecute some people because we've taken a lot of shit. We've taken a lot of shit. We've taken a lot of grief, and it's caused an incalculable amount of damage. There's no guarantee, but we're looking at right now more evidence than has ever been exhibited, probably since the Nixon administration. And even this is more damning. It's even clearer than the Nixon administration. Now, I don't expect Barack Obama to go to jail, but it could derail Michelle Obama getting on Grandpa Joe's ticket. It could derail that, which might actually be an important piece to think about and reconcile. Okay. Because if she gets on that ticket, it's going to be open season. And I'm not sure they really want that. I do think that a few low-level people might wind up getting fined or maybe do some petty time. You know, somebody like this Evelyn Farkas, who was the assistant to the Secretary of Defense, right? I think she was Susan Rice's assistant. She might do some time. She might get busted. I think the low-level perps might come into the crosshairs. Maybe somebody like John Brennan. Like if I was John Brennan, I would be a little concerned. You know, I would be a little concerned. Maybe John Brennan might take the fall. I don't know about Strzok because Strzok is so connected. He's very, very connected. And, you know, he's a guy that could probably easily relocate to some other country and just, you know, get extracted and we wouldn't see him. I could easily see that for that guy. But I do think a couple of low-level people might take the rap on this. If they went after Obama and really decided to, you know, put Obama in shackles, I think it probably cause a race riot in this country. That's what I think. Like, you know, could they afford to do that with Obama? No, but what they could do, and I think that this is an important piece, we're going to talk about this today, is that they could put him on ice. Because whatever is going on right now seems to be that there are two parallel governments. This idea of the deep state, you know, begins to take shape. I hate to use the word deep state, by the way. It's not a word I use a lot. I don't talk about the quote unquote deep state very much. But clearly we have two parallel governments or two parallel operating systems happening right now. And if somehow the kind of the locus or the nexus of that operating system could be contained in hazmat, then I think it's probably worth doing. And I think that might be more of the case. So what does that mean? It could be funds could be frozen from you know, through the Obamas, their group, what is it? OA, was it OA? I think it's OA or AO or something like that. That could be looked at, that could be defunded as a nonprofit. So there are things that can be done behind the scenes that could limit the efficacy and the power to fund these organizations and groups so that it becomes harder for them to pass money along to people who will do their bidding. Okay, that I could see possibly taking place. Maybe some low-level people. But this is where we are now, right? We have, and the reason I bring this up is because I got into it with this guy on Twitter because he was talking about how many people Trump killed because of coronavirus, that there's blood on his hands. And I'm like, okay, if you're really like not attached to just hating President A, you have to step back and say, well, what did this person do? What did this person do? Well, first of all, what he did after we all figured out that something was going on in China, I'd say pretty quickly he moved to stop the flights from China coming in. They still came in, but he did his best to do that. He did his best to deal with, you're trying to limit the theoretical spread of coronavirus in this country. And then very quickly, he started to listen to Tony Fauci. And Tony Fauci, who took, and we're going to talk more about Fauci, Tony Fauci, who took Niall Ferguson's projections and gave them to Birx and Pence and the president. The president says, let's shut it down. I'm going to let the states handle this. because every state is going to be different. And to that extent, in that regard, Trump was actually right. Because New York City was having something that was very different than, say, Nebraska or Iowa or South Dakota or Arkansas, right? Something very, very different. So it made sense in some ways for the states to be able to handle it on their own, okay? In which case, the blue states, or the states with Democratic governors, have taken this as an e-pass to tyranny. And so we're seeing that. Obviously, it's getting exposed, and people inside those states are seeing it now as well. And so, and that's a very brazen and risky strategy because you're playing chicken. You're hoping, you're really, really hoping that by allowing these states to run their programs, that people inside those states will see what's happening. And then come election time, we'll say, geez, these people were just dictatorial, and I'm going to vote against them. Again, we have to look at if the votes count, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, whatever. That's a whole different discussion. But even at a fundamental level where the mind flips to vote, the mind flips to other things. The voting is the actual physical manifestation of that, right? Is the act of the mind that flips and says, I'm going to do this. But it also represents like a flip of the consciousness inside of an individual. The voting is just a physical thing. So this guy was going off, and he was comparing this to 9/11 and all the people that died in 9/11. Where the fuck did 9/11 come into this from? Why are you bringing up 9/11? So then I asked him, this is really where I'm going with all this. Then I asked him, so what would you have done? And he said, it is not my job to make public policy. Oh, now that's quite interesting. Because to me, that speaks to the fundamental difference between two separate types of consciousness. One consciousness, or one type of consciousness, looks at something and says, there's a problem here. There's an issue here. How do we solve it? How do we take care of the issue? The other type of consciousness says, there's a problem here. I want somebody else to solve it for me. Because this person is not doing what I want them to do, or they're not doing something to the level that I think it should be done. But instead of taking responsibility for that, they want somebody else in a position of power to do it for them. You see, this is the fundamental difference in our consciousness. And people take the left and the right out of it just for a moment, okay? Take left and right, red and blue. This is what it boils down to. There are people that are able and willing to take on these ideas and not only think about how they could apply them at a larger level, but more importantly, how they can apply it to their own life. Like, I am not looking at Donald Trump to solve my problems. I'm not. And neither should you, by the way. You should not be looking to any of these people to solve your problems. However, on the other side of the equation, that's what they're doing. They believe that that entity has so much power that they can address all their grievances and solve all their problems with the stroke of a pen, because the ideological alignment, okay, therein lies the difference. I'm not looking for that guy to solve my problems. I'm not looking to that guy to make me healthier. I'm not looking to that guy to help my family get healthier. Like, that's on me. That's on me. That's on us. It always has been. And the relationship between sovereignty and self-rule became distorted and perverted over the last 50 years in this country, because a group of people got into the business of blame instead of saying, I can take care of this myself. And as a result of that, what they absolutely hate and detest isn't the fact that there are people who may be philosophically or morally aligned with Donald Trump. They hate the fact that there are people who are willing to take care of themselves, have accountability, have responsibility, and this radical idea of personal sovereignty. They hate that, because they can't even begin to approach that for their own life. They can't. And so again, what they do is they gather together and they create a larger organelle. They create and bond to have a macro consciousness because they are limited and fragmented. But by joining in and creating a macro entity, it theoretically makes them stronger. And when you create a macro entity, what do we have? We have a herd. It's exactly what we have. So think about this now. And I'm not trying to pump up the right or pump up conservatives, because for all intents and purposes, I'm an individualist. I mean, that's, how I see my life and how I've always seen my life. But it takes like 30, 40, 50, 100 of these people to equal one individualist. Think about that for a second. That's a great deal of power because they don't have the capacity to channel not even the ideology, but the authenticity and the bandwidth of accountability, responsibility, and being sovereign. They don't have it. They don't have it. And if you're watching this and listening to this, there's a really good chance that you do. Okay. And that's why it's so theoretically distended. That's why it might be 65 or 70, 75, 25, 30, 35. It's because the 25% or the 30% represents the totality of their 65 to 70 to 75%. That's the way it is. Because it takes 30, 40, 50, 100 entities to come together with their own fragmented piece of consciousness to bond, to have a whole. It takes one of you. Wrap your head around that for a second. Think about how powerful that is. Think about how powerful. And this dawned on me the other day when I was trying to talk to this guy. What's your solutions? He did not have any solutions. Like, would you have shut the border down earlier? Would you shut both borders down? Would you have done the lockdown earlier? There was nothing coming out of his mouth. But I'll tell you what did happen. All of a sudden, I got a thing from Twitter saying that one of my tweets had violated community standards. And that I either had to state why I should get my tweeting privileges back or just delete the tweet. I just deleted the tweet. Didn't mean that much to me. You got to pick your battles, right? But I know that guy or somebody associated with that guy or that group went through my tweets. And they found a tweet that they thought was objectionable and hateful. And it really wasn't. But it had some language in there that could be theoretically construed as being hateful. You go through my tweets. I don't have very many tweets like that, right? I don't really indulge in the language of hate, right? What we talk about here and what we try to uncover is disassembling this idea of groupthink and trying to dispel the trance that we're living in. And that's available to anybody, by the way. That is an equal opportunity bandwidth of consciousness. It's available to everybody if one so chooses to open up to it. Right? It's there. It's the logos, people. That's what it is. So just keep that in mind, right? For the most part, these are people that are looking to a third party to solve their problems. They're looking for the great big daddy or the great big mommy or the great big granddaddy, like Tony Fauci, to solve their problems. We don't do that. That's not what we do. We look to ourselves to solve our own problems. We look to ourselves to stay healthy. We look to ourselves to understand how our body works and what are some really powerful supplements. The power of vitamin C, the power of vitamin D, the power of sunshine, the power of oxytocin when people connect and hug and share the warmth of the human experience. We understand the power of this stuff. And we avail ourselves of these things because we are choosing to make our lives better. We are choosing to be able to endure the shitstorm that has been stirred up on this planet for really the last 50 years. And it's gotten pretty bad ever since 9/11. The volumes got turned up. But you see, what we're doing is we're taking accountability for our bodies and for our consciousness. The other quote unquote side doesn't do it. I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting to hear back. But instead, what did I get? I got Karen in stormtrooper boots cruising through my Twitter feed. This is what we're up against. But don't worry about it. Just remember, it takes 40 to 50 of these people to comprise one of you. Wrap your head around that. And this is not about aggrandizement. It's just not. It's just a kind of an algorithm that I stumbled upon. Think about that. So if there's one of us that represents theoretically whatever the one of us is, that represents 40 to 50 of these other entities, do the math. So the 25, the 20%, whatever that is powerful. It's very, very powerful. You have a lot more power than you understand. And it's unfortunate these other people don't understand that. And they could avail themselves of that. But in order to do that, they'd have to go and leave their group. They'd have to leave their psychic circle jerk every day to go into uncharted territory and really discover who they are. And for a lot of those people, it's terrifying. It would be terrifying. And I'm not even sure most of them are capable of it. I'd like to hold the space for that, by the way. I'll do my best. So let me tell you, let me give you a peek into the tepid, the absolute tepid application of groupthink. This is from a city not far from me, San Antonio, a lovely city, by the way. A lovely city. In some ways, I actually like San Antonio more than I like Austin. San Antonio has a little bit of soul. I like downtown San Antonio. They have an area near the Riverwalk, which is just dedicated to Mexican restaurants and Mexican bakeries. And it's a really, really cool experience and some very, very, very good Mexican food. I think it was Mi Tienda. I think that's down there. Anyway, check this out. This is from the the Red Republic of San Antonio. I'm not talking red in the kind of more traditional or current sense of the term, but more the Cold War sense of the term red. San Antonio City Council unanimously passes COVID-19 anti-hate resolution. Don't they have anything else better to do with their time than to pass these stupid resolutions? Will condemn terms like Kung Fu flu and Chinese virus. It's racist. Item 5. This is now talking about the Wuhan virus. Like, I don't live in San Antonio, so I can call it the Kung flu. I can call it whatever I want. Theoretically, this is the United States of America, right? And we have a First Amendment right to speak freely. San Antonio apparently begs to differ. Again, we're seeing this like trickle down effect or the treacle down effect of these low level tyrants. And Ron Nirenberg he was the mayor before. There was a mayoral race in San Antonio back in 2018. The guy that was running against Nirenberg, massive smear campaign, massive. The newspaper was in on it. They were some of the dirtiest politics I'd seen. And the problem with San Antonio, just like the problem with Austin, the problem with Houston, is zoning. The outer line area of San Antonio is big, but the voting block is inside the city, which happens to be more urban, more left, and people that have been brought into the country who have been given handshake deals. Vote this way, you get this, you get to stay here, you get all these goodies, right? This is the way it is with mostly. Same with Houston. The outer line areas of Houston are very conservative theoretically. Inside of Houston, not so much. Same thing with Austin, and they're getting ready to flip Dallas. So this is just bizarre. In a letter to council members, Mayor Ron Nierenberg says the city must take a stand against COVID-19 hate speech. The economy has gone to shit, right? San Antonio is one of those places that has a ton of restaurants, a lot of them on the Riverwalk, one of the biggest tourist destinations in the state of Texas. And all they can really rally around is hate speech. Ridiculous. The coronavirus has held no regard for race, religion, creed, or political boundary. As such, our efforts must meet the indiscriminate nature of COVID-19 with empathy and compassion for all our neighbors. Writes Nero. I ask that you consider adopting the attached resolution, which declares that our COVID-19 response efforts will be of hate and discrimination. Really what they're saying is that they don't want anybody, they're creating a blanket decree that if you attack the response around COVID-19, if you decide that you're going to go in and disassemble it, essentially what you're doing is you're not honoring the people that so-called coronavirus or COVID-19 has affected. Wrap your head around that. That's essentially what this is about. Because if you say, well, we don't believe in this, the numbers aren't there, that the response has been woefully overblown, you're not honoring the people that have been impacted by this by condemning, criticizing, or having a constructive, analytical insight into coronavirus. You're on the border of hate speech. Think about that for a minute. This is essentially what this is saying. At the 7-minute mark, a local citizen says bullshit. This is bullshit. This is what's going on here. You want to see what these clowns sound like? Where are we? Let's listen to the esteemed San Antonio City Council.
San Antonio City Council unanimously passed a so-called anti-hate resolution regarding COVID-19. Mayor Ron Nierenberg put forward the resolution, which denounces bigotry and hateful speech related to COVID-19, specifically in regards to Asians, Jews, and Pacific Islanders. The resolution language states that hate crimes, discrimination, and aggression against Asians and Jews are on the rise as those groups are blamed for the pandemic. It also states that deliberate use of terms like Chinese virus and Kung Fu virus encourages hate crimes against Asians and spreads misinformation.
We've seen incidents that are clearly racist in nature all around this country, and we've even seen some incidents here. But this is really about standing in solidarity with all the members of our community.
The mayor said the resolution is meant to show the city as a compassionate community that embraces diversity. San Antonio City Council
Never let a good crisis go to waste. Right? Never let a good crisis go to waste. Now, really what they're doing is they're circling the wagons and saying, well, if you want to look at this and disassemble it, you're really not honoring the people that are suffering. And now you're entering into that dreaded conspiratorial talk. Oh, I guess next you're going to blame the Jews, aren't you? We're going to blame the Chinese, aren't you? See, don't go there. Don't go there. We passed this anti-hate speech law. No, I'm just talking about the coronavirus. Right. We know where that veiled threat is. We can read into your thoughts. So what happens? Slope meets slippery. I got a lot to cover here today. Let's see. What do we have? Where else do I want to go? Just so much. Let's see. Let's get into a little Fauci. A little Fauci. Yes. A little Fauci goes a long ways, doesn't it? And doesn't he? pound for pound, inch for inch, one of the most powerful people on the planet. He may be all of 5'4", but he's a giant amongst men. So Fauci has come out now and said, right here, Fauci sows seeds of doom and gloom at Senate hearing. Of course, he's bunkered up. Quarantine. What's he got going on there in his room? Sometimes I like to look at what people have in their background. You can't get a lot of there. But anyway, let's get into this. The NIAID director tells senators a second wave of the coronavirus is entirely conceivable and possible because guess what? He says that even a vaccine, right? Even a vaccine might actually trigger worse symptoms. They're padding the vaccine experience. Let's just read through a little of this. In his opening statement, the NIAID director said there's only been only modest success with remdesivir, the antiviral drug being tested as a possible therapeutic treatment for COVID-19. Hydroxychloroquine is an anti-parasite, and hydroxychloroquine combined with zinc and probably some vitamin C transfusion might just do the trick, right? But they don't want that. Here we go. Let's keep going. Let me emphasize that there are a number of broad spectrum antivirals that are in the various stages of testing. In addition, we'll be looking at convalescent plasma, which is plasma for individuals who recovered from COVID-19 to be used in passive transfer, either in prevention or treatment. In addition, hyperimmune globulin, blah, 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 blah. Okay. There are at least 8 candidate COVID-19 vaccines in clinical development. The NIH has been collaborating with a number of pharmaceutical companies at various stages of development, blah, blah, blah. We have been involved in heavily developing with Moderna. It's a messenger RNA platform. So again, what that means is that they're going to get that vaccine right into your RNA. And your and what the vaccine will do is it will create kind of an endless series of exosomal excretion. So your body will be in a constant state of crisis, theoretically creating its own vaccines in the factory of the RNA. This is what they're planning on doing. Fauci also made note of the fact that no one has ever gone from isolating and identifying a virus genome to building a vaccine for first phase trials as quickly. So you wonder why. And then talk about the second wave. I think that possibility does exist. However, and the reason I say that is when you talk about, will this virus just disappear? As I've said many times, that's not going to happen because it's a highly transmissible virus. And even if we get better control over the summer months, it's likely to be a virus somewhere on this planet. They'll eventually get back to us. You see that? Basically, it says, hey, look, we can get through this, but guess what? There's another virus coming. You better be scared. There's another terror threat out there. There's another commie under your bed. So my approach towards the possibility of rebound and second wave in the fall is that it's entirely conceivable and possible that it would happen. But B, I would hope that between now and then, given the capability of doing the testing that you've heard from Admiral Garor and the ability of us to stock up on personal protective equipment and the workforce that the CDC under Dr. Redfield will be putting forth to be able to identify isolating contact trace. I hope that if we do have the threat of a second wave, we'll be able to deal with it very effectively to prevent it from becoming an outbreak. Not only worse than now, but much less, much less. This guy is such a serious bullshit artist. Yep. So Rand Paul decided to take on Dr. Fauci. The only member of the Senate to have tested positive COVID-19 is a member of the Help Committee and used his question time to grill Fauci. Finally. But, Fauci's used to this shit. He's a Capricorn. He's got scales. He's got scales instead of epidermal layers. So, he was fine, but it's fun to watch Rand Paul kind of go after him a little bit. Shall we have a little bit of Schadenfreude with Mr. Rand Paul here to see how he handled Dr. Fauci? Let's watch just a few minutes of how Rand Paul decides that he wants to question the esteemed doctor on his response, and not just response, but the power that he's been wielding over the last 3 months. Here we go.
Zero. It's not going to be absolutely zero, but it almost approaches zero. Between 18 and 45, the mortality in New York was 10 out of 100,000. So really, we do need to be thinking about that. We need to observe with an open mind what went on in Sweden, where the kids kept going to school. The mortality per capita in Sweden is actually less than France, less than Italy, less than Spain, less than Belgium, less than the Netherlands, about the same as Switzerland. But basically, I don't think there's anybody arguing that what happened in Sweden is an unacceptable result. I think people are intrigued by it, and we should be. I don't think any of us are certain when we do all these modelings. There have been more people wrong with modeling than right. We're opening up a lot of economies around the U.S., and I hope that people who are predicting doom and gloom and saying, oh, we can't do this, there's going to be a surge, will admit that they were wrong if there isn't a surge, because I think that's what's going to happen. In rural states, we never really reached any sort of pandemic levels in Kentucky and other states. We have less deaths in Kentucky than we have in an average flu season. It's not to say this isn't deadly, but really outside of New England, we've had a relatively benign course for this virus nationwide. And I think the one size fits all that we're going to have a national strategy and nobody's going to go to school is kind of ridiculous. We really ought to be doing it school district by school district, and the power needs to be dispersed because people make wrong predictions. And really the history of this, when we look back, will be of wrong prediction after wrong prediction after wrong prediction, starting with Ferguson in England. So I think we ought to have a little bit of humility in our belief that we know what's best for the economy. And as much as I respect you, Dr. Fauci, I don't think you're the end all. I don't think you're the one person that gets to make a decision. We can listen to your advice, but there are people on the other side saying there's not going to be a surge and that we can safely open the economy, and the facts will bear this out. But if we keep kids out of school for another year, what's going to happen is the poor and underprivileged kids who don't have a parent that's able to teach them at home are not going to learn for a full year. And I think we ought to look at the Swedish model, and we ought to look at letting our kids get back to school. I think it's a huge mistake if we don't open the schools in the fall. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I respond to that, even though there are only 32 seconds left?
Yes, and you might make it clear whether or not you suggested that we shouldn't go back to school in the fall.
Well, first of all, Senator Paul, thank you for your comments. I have never made myself out to be the end-all and only voice in this. I'm a scientist, a physician, and a public health official. I give advice according to the best scientific evidence. There are a number of other people who come into that and give advice that are more related to the things that you spoke about the need to get the country back open again and economically. I don't give advice about economic things. I don't give advice about...
He's such a lying sack of shit, right? He's a lying sack of shit. He doesn't give advice about economic things, but his advice to shut down the country, which was taken by one Donald John Trump and his team, and letting states essentially determine their level of response, has absolutely ruined the economy, which was on the rocks anyway. I mean, come on now. We'd hit the apex point of the Federal Reserve and all the refinancing, the reflow going back into the system to the tune literally of billions of dollars a day. But he's so disingenuous to say that what he suggested and what he provided as a potential model did not impact the economy. He's hiding behind his lab coat, his hypocritical oath, and the caduceus that he wields as both a staff and a badge. So he's being completely disingenuous, and he knows it, but he's been playing this game now for a very long time. And so he knows how to respond like a politician. Let's hear some more.
Anything other than public health. So I wanted to respond to that. The second thing is that you use the word we should be humble about what we don't know. And I think that falls under the fact that we don't know everything about this virus. And we really
now he's turning it back. And what he's trying to do here is control the narrative, right? So Rand Paul says that you didn't know, Ferguson didn't know. And because of the fact that you've been running these predictions that have literally taken the good old ship US, or even the West for that matter, and ran it aground, right? Ran it aground. You need to be humble moving forward. He, because again, he's been doing this for a long time, takes that and flips the narrative back on to this thing itself and says, we need to humble ourselves over this coronavirus because it is so mysterious, so alien to our consciousness and our awareness that we need to be humble and bow down to its world ending, society ending, economic ending powers and capacity. So he's reclaiming the narrative here. Watch what he does.
Got to be very careful, particularly when it comes to children, because the more and more we
So now
learn,
he invokes the children. See, this guy is a master. He's an absolute master. So what he's done now, he says, okay, I'm going to take the narrative back, and then we're going to throw the children in here because the children are always the emotional cord. And he's going to bring up the Kawasaki stuff. So now there's a new imminent threat. There's a new imminent threat. And now he's injecting another layer of quote unquote fear into, again, this sort of tug of war with the narrative. He's a cagey. This man is very cagey. He knows exactly what he's doing.
we're seeing things about what this virus can do that we didn't see from the studies in China or in Europe. For example, right now, children presenting with COVID-19 who actually have a very strange inflammatory syndrome, very similar to Kawasaki syndrome. I think we better be careful if we are not cavalier.
So now we're going to be careful that we're not cavalier. Okay, because there's another imminent threat. So he's a fear peddler. This is what this guy is. He's a fear peddler.
Thinking that children are completely immune to the deleterious effects. So again, you're right in the numbers that children in general do much, much better than adults and the elderly, and particularly those with underlying conditions. But I am very careful and hopefully humble in knowing that I don't know everything about this disease. And that's why I'm very reserved in making broad predictions.
So now he's the humble guy. He's humbled by the disease. He's your humble servant. He's been anything but. He's been a picture of raging arrogance throughout this entire crisis.
Thank you.
But he's cagey, isn't he? He knows exactly what he's doing. Exactly what he's doing. The biggest challenge that these people have in promoting this agenda, promoting the agenda of either contact tracing, also known as surveillance, testing, also known as DNA capture, and vaccination, also known as complete and total control of the body through the implementation of an RNA level vaccine, and of course, a chip that allows people to be tracked as to whether or not they've been vaccinated, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, even the efficacy of the so-called vaccine. These people who are against this idea of having those kinds of invasive activities in their lives pose a threat. They pose a threat. Now, somebody associated with the Gates Foundation has a pretty simple strategy to deal with the so-called threat. And when I play this for you, some of you will be shocked. Others, well, you might not be shocked, but you will certainly be surprised about how open the discussion and the dialogue around genocide is starting to surface. And I use that word with a great deal of respect, but this is exactly what this woman is talking about. So this is Carol Baker, appointed chair of CDC Advisory Committee on Immunization and Practices 2009, May 5th, 2020. Watch what comes out of her mouth. Here we go.
The battle is being fought, one family, one physician, one health center. That's why we're doing as well as we are. We're talking about the minority and strategies against the minority. So I have the solution. Every study published in the last 5 years, when you look at vaccine refusers, I'm not talking about, well, hesitants, most of them we can talk into coming to terms, but refusers. We'll just get rid of all the whites in the United States because...
Did you hear that? Did you hear that? And did you hear the little chuckle? Let me play that again for you.
Whites in the United States.
She's not being ironic or funny. They think she's being ironic or funny. She is not.
We'll just get rid of all the whites in the United States.
Look where that comes up. 33 seconds into that interview. She's not being ironic. She's being absolutely 100% truthful here. What if she said that the majority of the people that refuse vaccines happen to be so-called Black or African American, and we'll just get rid of them? She wouldn't have much of a job after that, would she? Then she goes on to make a case that the people that really want the vaccinations are people coming into this country. So therefore, these are the people we should be supporting and not the people who do not want to get vaccinated. I'll play a little bit more. This is one of the most disgusting interviews I've seen in recent memory. But this really shows you what's afoot here. And they may want to say that just get rid of the whites, right? But what about all the quote unquote liberal whites that want to have the vaccine and are trumpeting and championing the vaccine? And by the way, what is the skin tone here, right? Is she saying, hey, look, I'm white and I'm gonna take the first shot? Of course not. Of course not. This is a really disturbing interview.
Because Houston is the most diverse city in the entire United States.
She's talking about Houston.
There's 7 Asian languages spoken in that city. I've been a minority for more than 20 years.
What does she mean by I've been a minority for more than 20 years? What does she mean by that? What kind of minority group is she associated with? Being a reptilian Zeta hybrid? Is that the minority group she's talking about?
In the city of Houston.
Oh, man, look at that face. Look at that face. That's a hard face.
The majority is, we call Hispanic. That is not a race or an ethnicity. That is a political designation. But a lot of them are from Central, South America, Mexico. Guess who wants to get vaccinated the most? Immigrants.
That's what made Donald Trump's comment about bringing disease here so funny. They're at risk when they come here.
Immigrants.
Better vaccination rates in Mexico.
It is the well-educated, in terms of pieces of paper that they put on their wall, people that have been here a long time, and it's very unfortunate. But I think we need not lose the big picture. The battle is being fought, one family, one physician, one health center.
The battle, right? She's using war terminology. The battle. She's very clear that she's at war. Okay. Those are not my words. Those are her words. It's one of the most disturbing interviews I've seen in a very long time. Very long time. Somebody needs to follow up with that on some level. Carol Baker. Man, what do you guys think about that? What do you think about that? Oh, man, the vampire minority. That's pretty much true in Houston, Diana says. She seems to be slurring her words. Is she on something? Let's see. Why are you guessing the minority group rather than actually finding out? Well, geez, because I just figured it out, Dennis, what she was saying. That's why. If you've got some time here, I'm doing a show. Dennis K, go online, go to Carol Baker. She lives in Houston. Maybe you can find out what group she is, and then you can inform us. Okay? You can help us out here. You've got time. Probably you're listening. I'm doing a show. She should be evaluated for dementia. It's horrifying. Absolutely horrifying. Sorry. Because I don't know what minority she is. What minority is she? I don't know what she is. And she didn't tell us either. Right? She didn't tell us. I can make some guesses. So we're really in the thick of this thing now. And sometimes people that appear to be our allies eventually show us otherwise. And I hate to do this, because this is kind of what the communists do. This is what the socialists do. They out people, but sometimes it's important to out people when they really present more of a threat than actually being somebody that we can trust and we've actually given some trust over to. And the person that I'm going to be bringing into focus here is this guy, Dr. Shiva. Now, when I first saw this guy, I didn't know a lot about him, but I thought that he was pretty impressive, extremely articulate, and was able to voice his concerns and his ability to create kind of a counter narrative to the people inside of his party. That he's a Democrat, right? So the guys at True News dug into Dr. Shiva here. Now, he's been going after Robert F. Kennedy. Why would he do that? Right? I mean, theoretically, you would think that they're both on the same team. But why would he do that? Well, it's because he's a hired gun. And he's a fox in the hen house. Dr. Shiva's ties to Bill Gates' vaccine industry exposed. The purported vaccine safety activist and GOP senatorial candidate appears to be a plant on behalf of Big Pharma. During Tuesday night's Godcast, that's what these guys do. Rick Wiles and the True News team of Doc Burkhardt and Edward Zoll discussed Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai and his fascination with Marxist revolutionary Che Guevara. Che Guevara, by the way, was a nephew of Ariel Sharon. But there was so much more to the story to be told. Picking up where they left off with Dr. Shiva, they discussed his current Republican Party bid for the U.S. Senate seat held by Ed Markey. One of his campaign claims is that he's the inventor of email, which leads to his connections to Microsoft. Co-founder Bill Gates. In his own book titled The Email Revolution, How to Build Brands and Create Real Connections, he talks about how in 1992 he created a program for the Bill Clinton administration to automatically analyze and sort incoming emails at the White House. The program became the basis for Echo Mail, a company he founded that eventually collaborated with Nike to help it break into digital marketing. Echo Mail's future corporate partners include Coca-Cola, IBM, Lotus, Oracle, Dell, and Microsoft. Echo Mail eventually achieved a market valuation of nearly $200 million. He has since spun this into the creation of General Interactive, which describes itself as a venture fund that incubates, mentors, and funds new startups in various areas, including rural healthcare, media, biotechnology, and information technology. Okay, so this is where he's got his fingers. Through that entity, he founded Cytosolve, which describes itself as a platform for drug development in the fields of vaccines, liver cancer, and heart disease. This guy is not anti-vaccine. This is why he's going after Bobby Kennedy Jr. Okay. We also provide the opportunities for commercial companies such as biotech and pharmaceutical companies to work with us to use the Cytosol platform for supporting their internal drug development process. Cytosol also claims to partner with vaccine and drug makers to accelerate FDA approvals for vaccines and other pharmaceutical drugs. His principal business partner is Pfizer, the world's fourth largest vaccine maker. In his role, he has a clear-eyed view of the vaccine formulation process. Last month, he jumped into prominence in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic with an interview on the digital alternative news outlet, America's Voice. During the segment, it is claimed that he crushed National Institute for Allergy and Infectious Disease Director Tony Fauci, that's NIAID, and exposed White House Corona Task Force advisor Dr. Deborah Birx, President Clinton, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, Gates, and the World Health Organization, all people to whom he owes much of his immense personal wealth. But the interview vaulted Dr. Shiva into the leading position for the GOP nomination in Massachusetts Senate race. In the clip above, Rick Wiles and the True News team of Doc Burkhart and Rizal discussed how he has muted his criticism of Gates and downplayed his relationship with the WHO and the Gavi Vaccine Alliance, through which he wields immense control over global vaccine policy. There's your guy, Dr. Shiva. Make up your own mind. I just gave you some information. Rummage around, see what other connections you can make. Clearly, he's in the vaccine business. Clearly, he's taken on Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And he has been a guy that has staunchly taken on people like Bill Gates and Anthony Fauci, supported Judy Mikovits. The lines are drawn. Dr. Shiva, he's clearly on another side. I mean, once you go downstream into Cytosolve, I mean, come on. He's essentially creating infrastructure and platforms for pharmaceutical companies like Merck or Bayer or whomever, right, to jump in, use that platform to exchange information, collate information, do any various forms of analysis, which they theoretically would do when they're working on a vaccine. So he's creating essentially a what would you call it? Not a business-to-business software, but essentially like a platform. He's creating a platform for these massive drug companies to use. And apparently he's been quite successful. You know, he did the Echo Mail thing and it launched him into the heart of corporate America, corporate Earth. So this is a guy that you just got to keep your eye on. And everything that comes out of his camp needs to be really, really circumspect. You really need to go through what he's saying with a fine-tooth comb and try to understand. Now, remember, he was a Democrat. Now he's a Republican. It happens. You know, people have a change of mind, flip a script. But when I first ran across him, I thought he was pretty impressive. And there were people that warned me about him. And now I understand what they were talking about. And somebody who actually lives in Massachusetts, I mean, you know, a number of direct messages like, thumbs up, you're on it. And clearly showing his stripes. There's so much. Something really important. I'm not sure how much longer I'm going to go today because I got a bunch of stuff to do today as I get ready to oh, come on now. I have 13 minutes before I can actually access Twitter again. 13 minutes. Should I stay on the show 13 minutes longer so I can access Twitter? I'll do that. I'll definitely do that. One of the things that I did want to share with you, which is a Twitter post, and it has to do with, I got 12 minutes. Don't worry. I'll wait around Twitter. I got time. What do you guys think about this Dr. Shiva? You know, I don't like to point fingers, but you know, I mean, clearly the guy's got an agenda. He set himself up, somebody who is supposedly fighting the good fight, an advocate for truth, whatever. And now he's showing his true colors and, you know, can't abide by that. I just can't. And we need to be able to be lightning swift in our assessment of these people so that we're not helping promote their agenda. It's not fear-based, but come on now. He's taken on RFK Jr., and it's clear that downstream, he is deeply involved and invested in massive pharmaceutical companies, many of whom are involved in the production of these vaccines, which he theoretically is against. Something to miss with Shiva. RFK Jr. promotes so-called safe vaccines. Thanks, Uncle Glenn. Yeah, there we go. There's another little glitch in the matrix. I heard Dr. Shiva and Dr. Buttar are suspect. I don't know much about Buttar. I know a lot of people, another one of these guys is kind of, risen to the surface here in the last few weeks. Isn't he married to Fran Drescher? Who's that? Thank God I listened to this show. That's funny. Shiva plus Shyster equals Shiveister. I like that, Joe. Chris Ann Hall said something to consider on Quite Frankly yesterday. The most important public thing we can do is get constitutionally oriented sheriffs elected. I would agree with that. Where'd my stream go? Let's see. Elections are rigged. Christine knows that. Yep. It's too timely and too good to not be true. Don't bite the hook. He hasn't been censored by the mainstream media to discredit him. All right. Let me see. Let me go back in here. I'm wondering where the stream has gone. Let me see if I can refresh this thing. So I think I'm okay. Shiva is married to the nanny, Fran Drescher. Oh, how about that? Shiva, God of Destruction, statue in front of CERN. That's right. Good catch, Ann. Christine says, yeah, I think Dr. Buttar is crap too. Yeah. I was so glad that we had Sayer G on Friday. He's the real deal. I've known Sayer G for about 2 years now. Like I said, he was a client of mine. Still is. I'm going to be working with Sayer G tomorrow. And so, I don't have Dr. Shiva. I don't have Dr. Buttar as clients, but I do have Sayer G as a client. And I know him on a personal level and on an astrological level. And I can tell you right now, he is the real deal. All right. I'm just kind of waiting out the clock here because there are things on Twitter I do want to show you. But in the meantime, I've got one more story, which again displays the utter arrogance and hypocrisy of our elected officials. There's one set of rules for us and another set of rules for them. This is why they matriculate into politics, ultimately, so that they can live in a world where they're benefiting from the rule of law, their version of the rule of law, while on the other hand, we don't benefit or have the same kind of lax restrictions, playing fast and loose with the rules and laws that they create for the rest of us. Pennsylvania Secretary of Health moved his own mother out of senior facility to a hotel while coronavirus swept through nursing homes. Okay, so a little confusing here, okay? Going to have to wrap your head around this one. This is the Secretary of Health. This is not the Secretary of Health. This is the comic relief known as the signer. This is the Secretary of Health. And yes, we are dealing with a he in this instance. Nice pearls, by the way. Dr. Rachel Levine, Pennsylvania Health Secretary, Dr. Rachel Levine, admitted he moved his own mother out of a senior facility to a hotel while coronavirus was sweeping through nursing homes and killing elderly residents. So where have we seen this before? The mayor of Chicago saying, I got to go out and get my hair styled because I'm a public official and I need to look good. Everybody else, you got to let your hair get gray. You got to let your roots grow out and you got to let it grow long. But for me, I get the haircut. What about the official What's his name? J.B. Pritzker sending his family to Florida on a plane. Not supposed to do that. But what do we see? We see it happen. There's a rule for J.B. Pritzker, then there's a rule for the rest of us. Here we have another person who's doing the same thing. They cannot. This is what happens in the Communist Party, by the way. You know, the officials, the people that are higher up in the food chain and the Politburo, they get to do shit that the other people can't do. And then they enforce their rules and laws upon them so that their so-called freedoms and rights feel so much more better and powerful. Dr. Levine, who was the first transgender person appointed to a Pennsylvania cabinet, became Secretary of Health in 2017. The coronavirus is ravaging nursing homes across the U.S. because of deadly Democrat policies of forcing people infected with COVID-19 back into the long-term care facilities. Let's face it, the long-term care facilities have become the modern-day equivalent of death camps. Dr. Levine, however, made sure his 95-year-old mother was removed from the death box and transported safely to a hotel on taxpayer dollars, I bet. Nonetheless, I bet it was taxpayer dollars. I bet they used a vehicle like an ambulance or a first responder type vehicle to safely move his mother to a hotel. I'm guessing here, but I don't think it's too far-fetched. A reporter on Tuesday asked Dr. Levine about moving his elderly mother from a senior facility to a hotel. We're hearing you move your mother to a nursing home, from a nursing home to a hotel. A reporter said, what message does that send to thousands of Pennsylvanians whose parents are in nursing homes, but maybe are unable to move them out when the person in charge moves out their own parents? Levine answered the reporter by reading prepared notes and talking points. Well, my mother is actually a resident of a personal care home, not a nursing home. What the fuck? Well, here we go, parsing language, a personal care home. Oh, is she the only person living in a personal care home in the state of Pennsylvania? For those of you who have relatives in personal care homes, take note of this. That is regulated by the Department of Health, of Human Services, not the Department of Health. What? We're splitting hairs here, right? We're splitting hairs. Semantics is a trick and tool of the devil. Levine said, my mother requested, and my sister and I, as her children, complied to move her to another location during the COVID-19 outbreak. My mother is 95 years old. She is very intelligent and more than competent to make her own decisions. Blah, 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 blah. See how they do that? They have no problem with doublespeak. They have no problem with bending the truth. They have no problem splitting semantic hairs, finding loopholes. Meanwhile, if you have a mother who's inside of a healthcare facility, right? Not a personal care facility, but another kind of facility in Pennsylvania, I guess you're screwed. However, if your mother is in a personal care facility and she does say on her own volition that she wishes to be removed, you've now got a template. You now have a template to move your parents out of one of those facilities. Bottom line, end of story. All right, let's see what's happening with the Twitter ban. I'll even show you. I'll show you guys my Twitter ban. I'm proud of it. I'm going to wear it like a badge. I have 3 minutes. I have 3 minutes left before the gods of Twitter open the gates and I can walk back in. 3 minutes. I could talk for 3 more minutes. I could talk for 33 more minutes for that matter. Let's see where you guys are at one more time before I reclaim my sovereign status on Twitter. Why is she in a long care facility? Shauna, you bring up a really interesting point. Really interesting point. Yep. Let's see. What else do we have here? I hear the Pennsylvania Secretary of Health speak is torture. He's so patronizing, speaking to the public or your preschoolers. Well, that's what they're taught to do. The people in their own movie have their time left. Showing on their forearm, it glows. Oh, is that Is that what you call it? Logan's Run? Is that what we're talking about here? Oh, the movie In Time starring Justin Timberlake. Oh, Dayton, Ohio. Interesting, right? Dayton, Ohio. Rule violator. Do you have a scarlet R? See the total rule violator. But that's okay. That's what they do. Let's check in with Twitter. I have 1 minute left. 1 minute left until Twitter exonerates me, until Twitter redeems me, and I can come back into their ever-loving arms once again. 1 minute to go, and magically the gates will open. Here we go. So we get a countdown, New Year's Eve countdown. Do they get down to like granular? Does it get 30 seconds, 25 seconds, 10 seconds? I can't wait to find out. Continue to Twitter. Oh, come on now, Twitter. I'm keeping track. I'm going to be 1 minute in eternity. It's kind of like, okay, yeah, we'll end this lockdown in 2 weeks. No, sorry, we'll end it in November. They got me hanging on 1 minute. Let's go over here. What do we have here? That's the longest minute. I'm still being frozen out. That's the longest minute that I've ever experienced in a lot of ways, except for those minutes when I was waiting for my father to come home. Those were very long minutes, extremely long minutes, eternal minutes. Okay, come on, Twitter. Continue to Twitter. I'm in, baby. I'm in. I am in. So what did I want to show you guys? It's a tweet from Mr. Roosh V. And I have to find it once again because I had it on Twitter and I just I'll find it. Oh, this is the Forbes report. This is one I wanted to show you guys because it's over here. So forgive me. We're almost there. We're winding the show down. But I wanted to show this to you because this to me is absolutely and utterly troubling. So here we go. Keep your eye on this. U.S. preps for COVID-19 mass vaccination with $110 million spent on needles and syringes. Okay. I'm just showing this to you so that you can wrap your head around what we might be facing here. So the U.S. government is getting its vaccine supplies ready in anticipation of a working cure. 2 separate orders signed off on May 1st, 2020. The total of $100 million and specified needles and syringes for COVID-19 mass vaccination campaign. One $27.5 million order went to the Colorado-based Marathon Medical. The other $83.7 million to the Texan Business Retractable Technologies. The orders were replaced by the HHS, Department of the Assistant Secretary for Preparedness, ASPR. The orders come as a raft of different vaccines are under development and testing. The U.S. government has backed a handful, including a $450 million deal with Johnson & Johnson and Janssen Pharmaceutical. I guess that's their arm for its COVID-19 cure. The vaccine could be ready by early 2021. Oxford University's vaccine could be given to millions of people even earlier. AstraZeneca's chief executive, Pascal Soriot, suggested toward the end of last week that the cure could be ready for a limited rollout before the close of 2020. That would be a remarkable turnaround given that the vaccine testing and release can take over a decade. They've already got the vaccine. They've already got these vaccines pretty much primed and ready to go. What they're doing now is they're fine-tuning them and they're trying to figure out the distribution chain and how they're going to distribute this stuff. But it's clear the numbers, according to Rouge V, are 550 million needles. That's roughly 200 million more than the entire population of the U.S. What are they going to do with 200 extra million needles? Sell them on the open market? Put them on eBay? Maybe that's what they're going to do. They're going to put them on eBay. And then they're going to let these other countries buy them off the U.S. government via eBay. Now, that's capitalism in action. Anyway, I had to bring that to your attention. And I know it's at the end of the show, but I was trying to get it to a point where, well, I had a lot to work in today. And I certainly don't want to leave you with that, because that's a pretty formidable specter floating around your consciousness. But you got to understand, these things are happening. Like, is it a big smoke screen? Are they just doing this to make sure it looks like they're actually getting the needles? Oh, our president will never vaccinate us. Oh, that's not going to happen. Okay. You got to stare these things down, and you have to prepare for the eventuality. It's not paranoia. It's called presence of mind, having a mindset. You have to be able to prepare for that, and you have to look into the inevitability that this could actually be taking place, right? Post-contact tracers. And we didn't even get into the contact tracer thing today. There's this bizarre kind of like interview thing with Bill Clinton and with Gavin Newsom, who, by the way, they are so priming Gavin Newsom to be a presidential candidate in 2024. So priming him. I'd be utterly shocked if Newsom is not their guy in 2024. Utterly shocked. So they're pumping him up. And in fact, they had him on the same interview or the same forum with Andrew Cuomo. So it would not be out of the question to see a Newsom Cuomo ticket. Now, would they have the audacity of having a Newsom Cuomo ticket even for 2020? Question mark. Because Joe Biden is in really bad shape. He's hiding out in his basement, and they can hide him there through this so-called virus for as long as they want or can. They could run the ballot thing, but the end of the bottom line is that he would theoretically have to be president of the United States for 4 years. He can't last 4 months, maybe not even 4 weeks. So they've got to have a contingency plan. And I would not be surprised if somehow, somewhere, they may not be working on a Newsom Cuomo strategy, because that's exactly what was going on in this interview. And Gavin Newsom nearly lost to Matt Gonzalez when Matt Gonzalez, who's a Green Party member, longtime hardcore, real lefty. Gavin Newsom's a Nob Hill lefty. He's a Nob Hill lefty. Matt Gonzalez is a real lefty. Like Nicaragua, Daniel Ortega, Sandinista kind of lefty, right? He almost won, but they brought Bill Clinton in at the last minute to get behind Gavin Newsom and help politic that and get him across the finish line. One of the most tightly and hotly contested gubernatorial races in the history of the state of California. So I would not be surprised if we're looking at some point a Newsom Cuomo ticket, 2024, maybe sooner. But really struck me about that interview was the fact that they're going ahead. They're going to be using Americorps, the same kind of Acorn Americorps community organizing army to become the contact tracers. And they're doing this as if it is going to be a fait accompli, that it's going to happen, that this is a done deal. And where is this emanating from, right? Again, what we're seeing is this kind of rogue government just making arbitrary decisions, because obviously now the states have been empowered to do that. And Gavin Newsom is going to take that ball and he's going to run with it. But bringing Clinton into the discussion gives it more of a national form and platform, because he was a president, right? Theoretically, he was a president. So what we're seeing is, again, this kind of like, who the fuck put these people in charge, right? How are they, and why are they able to be tasked with creating, the contact tracer army? But this is what's taking place. They're acting as if this is a fait accompli. So wherever you are at a state level, whatever state you're in, a state of frenzy, a state of confusion, a state of anger, a state of complacency, a state of action, whatever state you're in, both metaphorically and literally, you need to figure out what's going on in your state. Because if you understand what's going on in your state, both personally and at a state level, you've got a better opportunity to figure out what you can do and how you can interact with other people. And maybe, just maybe, you might be able to make some kind of an impact. It may not be politically, it may not be at the ballot box, but through the force of your intention and the force of a collective will, you might be able to pump the brakes on some of this stuff. Okay. In order to do that, you have to bring the energy back, and let's bring the energy back in. After a wild ride today, we went places today. We definitely went places today. And some of those places, not really pretty places to dive into and look at. But this is the nature of our reality now. In the meantime, it's a beautiful day out there. We're really rolling towards spring, or we're in spring now. We've got Mars and Pisces coming up, which ultimately can be a very creative aspect. A lot of times in a time of crisis, we lose touch with our creative potential. Art, creativity, imagination, they all begin to take a back seat to the root chakra mandates that are being thrown down by the so-called managers of this reality. So this could be a good time for many of you to look at your life in terms of a creative enterprise or creative exercise, and striking out against the forces of inertia and oppression by doing something creative for yourself and ultimately for others. So I'll leave you on that. See this time as an opportunity to be creative and use your life as a creative vehicle. Whether it's shaping your body, shaping your diet, shaping your mind, maybe even doing something at a creative level, a collage, a vision board, a painting. Maybe you want to make a piece of music like our good friend Steve did, who cranked out the coronavirus blues, which was amazing, right? So let's tap into our creative spirit here as kind of a healing balm. And it hurts no one, right? We're not offending anybody. We're not taking any kind of dramatic or antagonistic action. It's really just the force of creativity and imagination flowing through us. All right, I'm out of here. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay on what's possible. One more show tomorrow. No show on Friday because the wheels of the moving truck will be engaged. Love you all, and I'll see you tomorrow for another edition of 15 Minutes of Flame. Take good care.